with the new government will depend on its adherence to democracy and respect for human rights.
If they return to the death squads, if they return to the killings of the early 80s, they should not expect support from individuals in our legislature as well as, I would assume, our government.
But a former ambassador to El Salvador predicts the right-wing victory will produce more polarization and violence.
I think that the Arena victory is precisely the result that the guerrillas hoped for. The guerrillas want the country radicalized.
A senior administration official concedes that there is uncertainty about whether the new president can really run his party, but says that the key to the situation in El Salvador is the army. Dan?
But, Bill, hasn't the Army been accused of many human rights violations that have caused many deaths?
Absolutely, Dan, but clear markers have been laid down, they say here in Washington, and the military has been told in no uncertain terms that unless it respects human rights, Congress will cut off all military and economic aid.
Bill Plant, thanks. For the first time in their lives, citizens of the Soviet Union will be voting next Sunday in contested elections for the new Soviet parliament. Whether this is a real effort at representative government remains an open question. Today, Nobel Prize-winning scientist Andrei Sakharov protested his exclusion from the official list of nominees. And Communist Party rebel Boris Yeltsin says the Kremlin is conspiring to keep him from being elected. Our CBS News Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson talked with Yeltsin today.
To his supporters, Boris Yeltsin symbolizes democracy. People now able to choose at least some representatives to a newly created legislature. To his enemies within the Communist Party, he is a dangerous maverick. And to the people of Moscow, his campaign is a litmus test of whether or not the elections have been rigged. They don't want to allow me to be elected, he said in an exclusive CBS News interview today. I'm the man who doesn't fit. He added, I think it's being done under pressure from a definite group of the right wing, a group within the Communist Party. In a recent television debate with his opponent, there were tough questions allegedly from ordinary people. But when Yeltsin's campaign staff checked, they found the names and addresses were false. It was, said his supporters, a campaign dirty trick. I hope to win in an honest way, he says, even with the certain dishonest game of the other side. Yeltsin's popularity comes because he is outspoken about issues the party doesn't like, such as ending special privileges for party members. The party's Central Committee is striking back by ordering an investigation. His enemies accuse him of pushing too hard and too fast for democratic reforms. Mikhail Gorbachev was once Yeltsin's political mentor. Today, Yeltsin is among the most visible critics of Gorbachev's failure to quickly improve life in the Soviet Union. Yesterday, thousands took to the streets in an unauthorized rally saying they would stage a one-day protest strike if Yeltsin loses. Does he support them? No, he says, I think that's a form of extremism. Yeltsin was on the attack again tonight, calling bureaucrats monsters. It is not the party's election, he said, using a phrase not heard in this country in a very long time. The people will elect. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
And straight ahead on the CBS Evening News, correspondent David Martin reports on a controversial new plan to unchain the U.S. nuclear power industry. And correspondent Phil Jones on the question of a curfew to put a lid on Washington's murder rate.
We compared the Subaru Justy ECVT from 0 to 60 against 3 popular automatics. Against the Hyundai Excel, we blew their doors off. Against the Toyota Tercel, we blew their doors off. And against the Porsche 928S, well, they blew our doors off. But with a price of only $77.91, we can afford to get our doors fixed. Test drive it.
Get $500 back on a Subaru Justy or 4.9 financing through May 2nd.
Attention shredded wheat eaters, you've been missing something. Taste, but no more. Kellogg's Squares brings you that superlative shredded wheat nutrition with no salt, no fat, no cholesterol. But wait, Kellogg's Squares gives you free in every bite. Taste. Sweet, delectable fruit in the middle. You might never eat plain old shredded wheat again. Kellogg's Squares, shredded wheat with taste. free in every bite. And speaking of taste, now squares have 35% more raisin. Great taste, free.
This Easter, Baskin-Robbins is rolling your favorite flavors into an irresistible parade of Easter Bunny ice cream cakes.
Well, hello, you sweet thing, you.
Get hopping to Baskin-Robbins and order yours today.
No tough sinus cold is going to sideline these guys. Congestion, pressure. New maximum strength Dristan is tougher to sweep away congestion, pressure, and pain. And it won't make you drowsy. When you can't call in sick, call on Dristan.
The lagging and flagging nuclear power industry in this country may be due for a new and controversial shot of energy soon. CBS News Pentagon correspondent David Martin has learned that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going to try to change radically its licensing procedure. As Martin reports, the result could be the biggest boom in nuclear power in years.
An emergency shutdown at a nuclear power plant. This is a simulation, but public fears of the real thing have stopped the nuclear power industry dead in its tracks. Since the accident at 3 Mile Island 10 years ago this month, not a single new nuclear power plant has been ordered. But now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is about to make a major change in the licensing of nuclear power plants, a change designed to breathe new life into a moribund industry.
It will make the process more stable and certainly more predictable, and will, I think, encourage utility executives to be more interested, perhaps, in buying nuclear energy and nuclear energy plants for our country in the future.
To build a nuclear power plant today, a utility must get 2 licenses, one to build and a second to operate, often in the face of strong, even violent public concerns about safety. That has produced multi-billion-dollar white elephants, like the Shoreham nuclear power plant, which was completed in 1985 but has yet to provide a single kilowatt of power. Under the new licensing procedure, a utility would only have to get a single license to both build and operate.
Had there been a one-stop process, this plant would have been online at a savings of several $billions.
The most important change of all is to try to find a way to shorten the period that it takes from the time that you begin construction to the time that you finish it. If we can bring that time frame down from that 12 or 14-year period into the 5 or 7-year range, nuclear power represents a very viable option.
Opponents of nuclear power are determined to block the new licensing procedure.
We will certainly oppose it, and will very likely oppose it in the courts. The best way to describe this rule change is it's aimed at accelerating licensing of the power plants by reducing public participation.
The intention is to have all the major decisions done up front before you start construction of the plant.
The result of this would be that plants that do have construction flaws would be allowed to operate and operate unsafely, increasing the risk of accidents, or the repairs would have to be made after the plant begins operating.
The Commission is expected to vote on the new licensing procedure within the next several days, and officials there are confident it will pass. There are many who say it will be the biggest thing to happen to the nuclear power industry since the accident at 3 Mile Island. David Martin, CBS News, Washington.
Labor problems today for the other half of Frank Lorenzo's troubled airline empire, Continental Airlines. But with the Eastern Airlines strike now in its 3rd week, the day's harshest blow to Lorenzo's plans may have been dealt by a well-known multimillionaire. Details from correspondent Mark Phillips.
Selling the New York, Washington, Boston shuttle to developer Donald Trump was the key to Eastern's survival plan. The airline needs the money and has been trying to keep the shuttle viable during the strike. Today, the sale, or at least the sale price, was put in serious doubt. Donald Trump had agreed to buy the Eastern shuttle from Frank Lorenzo, Eastern's owner, last October. Today, Trump sent Lorenzo a letter saying the shuttle has since become an entirely different business. Its market share and customer base may be lost. Rebuilding the shuttle would take a great deal of time and a great deal of money, Trump says. That's big business talk, for Trump thinks he can get the shuttle for less. The previously discussed price for the shuttle was $365 million. But Donald Trump thinks the shuttle business has been so damaged by the strike that it's now worth just $200 million. Texas Air, Eastern's parent company, responded late today saying if Trump was hesitant on the deal, it would solicit offers from other parties. Eastern, meanwhile, is advertising for pilots to replace those on strike.
You reach a point where you must take action to make sure that you've got enough pilots to rebuild the airline, and that's what we're doing today.
But the striking pilots say Eastern has lowered its standards in a desperate attempt to find replacements. In a telegram obtained by CBS News, Eastern says candidates must have 1,200 hours of flying time instead of last year's average of 4,000 hours. That they must have correctable 20/70 vision instead of the sharper 20/50.
Mr. Lorenzo's benchmark has always been cheap help. Experience is not necessary.
Eastern and the FAA insist any new pilots will meet federal standards. There was an attempt today to spread the work stoppage to Frank Lorenzo's other airline, Continental. Flight attendants picketed, but Continental's schedule was not affected. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Miami.
The British Transportation Department warned today of what it called a, quote, high and continuing risk of bomb devices like the one that blew up the Pan Am jet over Scotland in December. This general warning was sent by telex to airlines and airports in the wake of pressure for the British government to explain whether better warnings about what it knew might have prevented the Pan Am disaster.
Financial serenity. To soar beyond the reach of worry. The Travelers gives 1 out of every 6 Americans this financial peace of mind. With secure new pathways toward growth and the overriding promise of insurance protection. The Travelers, you're better off under the umbrella.
Freedent's the one. If you've got dental work, you've got 3 great reasons to chew Freedent gum. You know Freedent won't stick to your dental work, and Freedent freshens your breath. But maybe you didn't know Freedent moistens your mouth. So if you hate a dry mouth like I do, chew Freedent.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth, and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Ordinary windows versus windowscaping. Windows. Windowscaping. Windows. Windowscaping. See the windowscaping experts only at the Pella Window Store.
Kellogg's isn't the best tasting Post, The best tasting Raisin Bran is Raisin Nut Bran, because our raisins are special, covered with nuts, nutty, plump, and tender. One taste and you'll say, Raisin Nut Bran is the best tasting Raisin Bran.
Israel staged its deadliest airstrike of the year in Lebanon. Were killed when Israeli warplanes bombed what the Israelis said was a suspected guerrilla base in the Syrian-controlled Bekaa Valley. Israel said this was revenge for recent border raids by the Ahmed Jabril organization, described as a radical Palestinian group that opposes PLO chief Yasser Arafat. Israeli Defense Minister Rabin said he believes, quote, those who deserve to get it, got it. In Northern Ireland today, gunmen claimed 2 more lives in a series of revenge killings between Protestants and Roman Catholics. The victims were 2 senior policemen of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, shot to death in their unmarked car near a Catholic village on the border with the Irish Republic. The Irish Republican Army claimed responsibility. This brings the total dead this year in Northern Ireland to 26, 12 in the last 12 days. Spokesman for President Bush said today that Mr. Bush does not plan to expand the suspension of assault rifle imports to cover other weapons. Mr. Bush himself said that he would support a tougher weapons crackdown if it is, and now I quote the president, constitutionally sound. In an effort to crack down on violence in President Bush's own backyard, a curfew was set to begin tonight in the District of Columbia. CBS News National Affairs correspondent Phil Jones reports about an admittedly desperate effort to stop the killing.
Well, do you favor the curfew?
I favor anything that will stop this mess. This is ridiculous, you know. I mean, every time you turn around, you see a young person lying on the ground somewhere in this area.
Murder number 119 on the streets of Washington, D.C. early this morning. The D.C. City Council passed a curfew emergency law for kids 17 and under in response to the soaring drug-related violence. But today, just hours before police were set to start enforcing the curfew, the American Civil Liberties Union won a delay from federal Judge Charles Ritchie, who said enacting a law with serious constitutional questions gives him chills. He called the curfew more of a reaction than a solution.
I baptize you, my brother, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Take me to
It was the churches located in the drug-infested neighborhoods of Washington that fought for passage of an 11 p.m. weekday and midnight weekend curfew. But even before today's court setback, the battle lines over the ACLU's opposition to the curfew were drawn.
In my house, when I was growing up, couldn't any committee come in there and tell my parents what time I could or could not be home.
Washington Mayor Marion Barry has only reluctantly supported the curfew while arguing that the real problem is with the parent.
Now, the curfew is not a panacea. The government doesn't make women pregnant, men do, and women ought to raise their children to keep them off the streets after 11 o'clock, but they won't do that.
And the law's real effect would be against tens of thousands of innocent teenagers who, to obey the law and avoid being criminals, would have to be under, effectively, house arrest every night from 11 o'clock.
Today's 10-day court delay will give embattled city officials time to draft another, less restrictive curfew. But the city government and court are clearly under pressure to do something that will save the youth of what has become the murder capital of the nation. Phil Jones, CBS News, Washington.
This is Lisa. Lisa just loves the taste of fried foods, but she's trying to cut back on fat and calories. Well, Lisa, meet Pam. Instead of cooking in butter, margarine, or oil, use Pam cooking spray. Pam can save you over 500 calories per week, so you can make a big change without making a big change.
What do more drivers say after an oil change with Pennzoil at Jiffy Lube?
I can drive for miles and miles. I can drive for miles and miles. I can drive for miles and miles and miles and miles.
Every 3,000 miles, quality Pennzoil, lube, fluids, 10 minutes. Jiffy Lube, we give more cars more miles and miles.
This year, if you really want to get money back, listen to Henry Block.
Go to Subaru.
Up to $1,500 back or 4.9 financing on a Subaru.
Sometimes minor mouth pain can be major trouble. Maximum Strength Anbesol gives maximum strength relief on contact. So before you can say Tchaikovsky, the pain's gone. Maximum Strength Anbesol. It's major relief.
2 weeks from tomorrow, Chicagoans go to the polls to elect a new mayor. Today, the frontrunner got a big boost. But as our chief political correspondent Bruce Morton reports, that boost put two of the nation's top black Democrats at odds.
Democratic National Chairman Ron Brown came to Chicago to endorse his party's nominee for mayor.
I'm here today to endorse Richard M. Daley for mayor of Chicago.
That's what national chairmen do, of course, but in this racially conscious city, Brown was going against Chicago's, maybe America's, most prominent black Democrat.
The next mayor of our city, Mayor Tim Evans.
Jesse Jackson has endorsed a black candidate, Alderman Tim Evans, who's running as an independent. And that has led some white politicians to say Jackson is putting race above party loyalty.
It seems that his rainbow coalition just amounts to nothing but shades of black.
Some of Evans's supporters say it's the Daley campaign that's racist.
Dumb Daley racism. Daley expects unconditional support of him, so he will give only unconditional non-support of me and us generally.
It is a three-way contest. Democrat Daley, Independent Evans, and Republican Edward Verdoliak. Daley has campaigned in black neighborhoods and sought black votes, though he got few in the primary.
That's what we're going to have, a black man, not a white man. I'm for Tim Evans.
So they support another candidate, the mayor of the city of Chicago. After the election, you have to be the mayor for everyone.
Brown, at his quick endorsement stop today, talked party unity.
I am not in the city of Chicago to pick a fight with Reverend Jackson or any other Democrat. I'm here not looking to the past, but looking to the future.
Ron Brown is doing what he has to do. Jesse Jackson's doing what he has to do. Neither one of those actions should surprise anybody.
If the polls are right, Chicago may do what a lot of moderates say the National Party should do, elect a middle-of-the-road white. But will he be able to govern if the voters divide along racial lines? And what about Jackson? Blacks are normally the Democrats' most loyal voters, but if they see Jackson turning maverick, won't a lot of them turn with him? Bruce Wharton, CBS News, Chicago.
In the world of great automobiles, there are many fading faces. But now there's Riata by Buick. The competition pales by comparison.
The great American road belongs to Buick.
Today's Monday, coming off a rough weekend. Saturday, I painted the den and came up aching, so I took aspirin. Sunday, I cleaned the attic. More aches, more aspirin.
If you take aspirin more than once a week, make your aspirin Tri-Buffered Bufferin. It's 100% aspirin, plus 3 buffers that help protect against stomach upset plain aspirin can cause.
I sure needed it this weekend.
Tri-Buffered Bufferin, in tablets and caplets. If you take aspirin more than once a week.
Introducing Total Raisin Bran. Other raisin brands have only 1/4 as much vitamin nutrition. And eating a Raisin Bran with only 1/4 the vitamin nutrition you could get is like having Mount Rushmore.
Hey.
With only one president. New Total Raisin Bran is the only raisin bran with 100% of 11 vitamins and minerals. Total nutrition has finally come to Raisin Bran.
These days, $27,000 or more doesn't even buy you a second glance, unless you buy Riata by Buick.
The great American road belongs to Buick.
The battle for Jalalabad in Afghanistan is now in its 3rd week. Government forces have pinned down the attacking rebels with heavy air and artillery strikes and long-range Soviet missiles launched from the capital city of Kabul. Kabul itself is preparing for its own siege. And as combat correspondent Anthony Mason reports tonight, that could come soon.
From their mountain camps around Kabul, the Mujahideen guerrillas can look down on the capital city that continues to elude them. They can see the enormous Soviet-built Ministry of Defense building. But Kabul is still guarded by a ring of hilltop posts left by the Soviets. This is now the communist regime's last line of defense. Every day, the small guerrilla camps around the capital relay troop and supply movements to each other. They're hidden in the abandoned villages. 20 guerrillas in one bombed-out building, 15 in another, constantly moving to confuse the army. The government troops have superior Soviet artillery, but Afghan soldiers have become prisoners of their own posts, afraid to leave their bases because the roads outside Kabul now belong to the Mujahideen. Sporadic bursts of artillery fire are meant to keep the rebels at arm's length. But it's not artillery that's blocked the guerrillas' path to Kabul. It's the winter, the worst in recent memory. More than a foot of snow fell in one day 2 weeks ago. The mountain paths vanished beneath the blizzard, and supply lines broke down for days. Trucks were stranded in the snow, and horse caravans of food and ammunition could not get through. But the Mujahideen have used the winter to dig in around the capital. This small mud hut hides a vast guerrilla base burrowed deep into the mountainside. Here, the mortars, grenades, and missiles the Mujahideen will need to take Kabul are slowly piling up in a small city of tunnels. The Mujahideen began carving out these caves 7 months ago to house support systems and supplies for 4,000 fighters. The mountain rock makes them virtually impregnable from government attack. Outside Kabul, artillery practice passes the time until spring. The mountain trails are finally beginning to clear. It's only a matter of time now, said one guerrilla commander. When the snow melts, so will the communist regime. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Kabul.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Do our viewers know something that you don't? Chances are they do. Watch Kathleen Sullivan and Harry Smith weekdays on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
You know, I think I'm really going to like it here in the States, Denny.
Great. Does this mean you're going to stay?
Of course. Your American TV